All right. I think now would be a good time to get started. So welcome, everybody. Welcome to this session. Today, we are going to be speaking about AM as a cloud service, the local SDK build analyzers. My name is Brian Chickelson. I'm a product manager, and I'm joined by my engineering colleagues, David Boschart and Carl Pauls.
Hi.
All right. In terms of agenda, I will be kicking it off with some background of the feature and the motivation. Why is it that we did this? David will deep dive into some analyzer details, and then Carl will make it really concrete with a demo. And after that, we'll take some questions. You can put some questions in the chat as things pop up. We'll try to get to them, and we'll definitely have some time at the end to address them. And if there continue to be questions after that, I'll put in a link. I think there already is a link in the chat from Sherry to a community forum where we can basically have a more asynchronous kind of conversation, putting in replies, that type of thing. Okay, so before I get started, I just want to kind of take a kind of a side note here that this group might find kind of interesting or would appreciate. So while putting together this slide deck, this PowerPoint deck, we're trying to figure out for the word analyzer, should we use the British spelling, so with an S, or with a Z, which is the North American spelling. And I was informed by engineering that the GitHub project already has an S, and so we have to go with analyzer with an S. And the moral of the story is that he or she who has a compiler always wins. All right. So let's look at the developer flow that people use for AM as a cloud service. And in some ways, at least the beginning part, not so different from other AM solutions like AMS or on-premise that you might be familiar with. So we have this, you're doing some local coding using the SDK. You might be using your laptop or your desktop. And then you make a few changes, then you compile it. And once that's built, you deploy over to your local environments, to the quick start, and it probably doesn't work. You probably have to do it again. You probably got some compilation errors or something. You do it a few more times, and finally you have something that is maybe good enough, and you want to see it in AM as a cloud service. You want to see it in your cloud development environment. So you push it there. Yeah, looks good. You might go and repeat the cycle, make some more changes. At some point, you're going to like what you have, and you and your organization are going to say, okay, let's go and push this thing over to staging and production. And by the way, we use Cloud Manager, the Cloud Manager application to do that. And I'll show you that in a screen of that in just a couple of minutes. But the point I want to make here is that this iteration cycle here, when you're doing things on your local laptop, takes seconds. When you push things over to cloud, we're in the realm of minutes because we're getting the bits over there. There's additional kind of processing, additional analyzers that are happening there. And that's the point. The build analyzers that we're talking about have always run over here. Okay, so seconds versus minutes in the cloud. So let's look at Cloud Manager, which maybe you're familiar with it from experiences with AM as a cloud service, or even with managed services, the AMS offering. You could use Cloud Manager there as well, and we encourage you to do so. It really allows you to deploy your code over to cloud environments and has various quality gates to make sure that things look good, code hygiene and other things that David will actually get into, especially with the analyzers. So the gates involve there's some validation, build-in unit testing, code scanning. It'll actually build the images and then deploy it. And the analyzer looks for issues in the Maven project. Okay. So back to this screen, we had already mentioned that the build analyzers run here, right? And it takes minutes. But as developers, we want to fail fast, right? So that's why as of November, the November release, remember with AM as a cloud service, we have these monthly releases and even additional updates even more frequently. Well, as of the November release, these analyzers that David is going to get into and talk about are now part of the local SDK. So you could actually run them locally in order to fail fast. And with that, David, won't you continue with a little bit of a deep dive on the
analyzers? Yeah, of course. Thank you, Brian. Okay, so let me go a little bit more into detail about these analyzers. So running these analyzers that were already running in AEM as a cloud service locally is done by using a new Maven plugin that is called the AEM Analyzer Maven plugin that you can easily add to your existing AEM projects, or it automatically gets added to any new projects that you create using the archetype. And it runs a whole bunch of validations that basically just check that your project works fine in the cloud, and that you don't get any unexpected errors and so on. And I didn't really want to go through the whole list because it's quite a long list, and we're growing the list as we speak. We're always adding new additional analyzers. But just to give you an idea of the type of things that it can check, I lifted a few out. So for example, there's one analyzer called API Regions Exports Imports. Now this analyzer basically checks if all the imports in your OCI bundles are satisfied by an API that is either exported from the AEM as a product, the AEM product, or exported by another bundle from your own project. And if it isn't, then this bundle will not resolve at runtime and it won't work. So this analyzer basically gives you a warning ahead of that if you have a missing if you're missing export for your imports. Another one that is on the list is the bundle native code analyzers. Native code doesn't work in the cloud. You shouldn't have native code in your projects. So this one simply checks that there's no native code in your bundles, and it basically reports an error if it finds any native code. Then there is an analyzer with a long name, API Regions Cross-Feature DUPS. That one checks whether your code exports an API that is also part of the public AEM API. So in that case, you would have two entities providing the same API, which is really not a good idea, because in that case, you might have situations that you might be using the one that you're not expecting. It can just basically cause problems. And there's a really simple solution for it. You don't need, if AEM already provides this API, you don't need to provide it yourself. So you can just remove it from your own project, and this analyzer will tell you about it. And then the last one I wanted to mention here is the Repo Init analyzer. That one currently checks the syntax of all the Repo Init sections. In the future, it might be expanded to do a deeper check as well. But that's another thing that, this one looks at your content packages and does a Repo Init check on those sections there. All right, a little bit of background about the analyzer framework. The local analyzers, as I mentioned, are executed via a Maven plugin called the AEM Analyzer Maven plugin, which is open source. You can check it out at link number 0. And it's configured in such a way that the defaults run all the analyzers that are running in AEM as a cloud service as well. So if you use it with its default settings, you just basically get the same analyzers locally, which is kind of nice and simple. However, the analyzer framework itself is open source. It's part of the Apache Sling project. And one of the things you could do, if this is kind of useful for your project, you could write additional analyzers. You might have additional constraints in your project that you want to check. So you can add your own analyzers, write them to the analyzer API, and include them in the AEM Analyzer Maven plugin configuration. So it's an open system. You can add your own analyzers in there too. And then one other thing I wanted to show, Brian, next slide, please, is how simple it is to add the analyzers to your existing projects. Basically, what you do is you add a new submodule, typically at the very end of the list, that is of packaging type AEM Analyze, and it simply just references the AEM Analyzer Maven plugin without any additional configuration. And then the only other thing it needs is the content package as a dependency that you want to analyze. And this content package is typically of the same Maven project set, of the same kind of reactor POM. For example, if you use the archetype, it will generate an all project that contains all your bundles and content packages. So that's a good one to reference. But you can also point it, create it outside of your Maven project and point it at anything that has Maven coordinates. So that is, also a possibility. And finally, if you just want to get started, just try the archetype, create a project, and it will generate everything for you, and it will run out of the box. And that brings me to the next point. Carl has a nice demo lined up, and he's going to show you all how this actually works in practice. Carl.
Yep. Thank you, David. I had to find that button first. So exactly, I'm gonna quickly generate a new project here using the latest archetype that's just released, number 25, and just to basically show you that it will actually generate a project that has the analyzers hooked up here. But as David mentioned, it's not necessarily you don't have to use the archetype to get them. Again, you also it does is to create the normal project layout here for you. You have your core, you have your all project, and you have this new analyze sub module here. So if we just quickly look into that, it's just only the POM, and it is effectively the POM that David just showed. So if you have an existing project, yeah, pretty much all you have to do is to add this POM file somewhere and reference it from your reactor POM, and then it would run as part of your build as well. So that's not necessarily the point. Let me go into a different prepared project, but it's similar to the first one. It's still the vanilla setup. So if I build this now with the hooked up analyzers, it will first, of course, compile all my project. It compiles the core bundle jar and the front end and some ITs and things like that. And then it will eventually come to the analyzers. So they have to do a little bit of extra work because they will effectively aggregate here in this step different aggregates which represent the cross product that we do in the cloud. So you have the tier specific run modes, author and publish, and you have the environment specific modes, so dev, stage, and prod. So it has to create your projects for all of those and then run the analyzers for them. So it does that here. We will see it starts first with the author prod variant. So everything that you had on author prod, things that act together. That is similar to what we will have as a safeguard in the build image step right now. So it pretty much is the same check that we do here. You can see these are the different analyzers that David mentioned that are running here. And so it finished the first one, which is the publish prod in this case we're looking at, and then you see we go to publish stage and so on and so on. So it will run through all the different combinations and then eventually succeeds, which you would expect for a vanilla setup. Otherwise it'd be bad, right? So let's look at the second example here, which I prepared a little bit, but I'm going to show you what I did. So you wouldn't typically do it like this, I suppose, but it's really simple. I'm just adding a single bundle as an embed into an install folder here, namely the org Apache Sling Commons log bundle, which I picked on purpose here as a demo, obviously, because this is an interesting one because we have it in the product, right? So it's part of what AM provides. But it's problematic because A, the artifact is there, but B, especially the packages it exports are part of our public API. So we allow that in AM as a cloud service, that you have side-by-side versioning, and we try to protect against it a little bit using API regions. I'm going to stop here for a second. But we really don't encourage to do that, especially if it's API, because even so AM shouldn't be affected. If you do that, it still is a huge source for errors, or potential errors at least. So we expect that the analyzers will help us catch the situation, and they do. Again, it's a little bit of a gray area because there could be valid reasons why you have side-by-side versioning and shadow our API. So in this case, we for now only give a warning here. So as you, but so it will not fail the build, but it gives you a warning. You can see it here. You get a lot of them because that that bundle has lots of packages and they all conflict, right? You see the different packages mentioned for each of the warnings here, that we get the core properties, core helpers, core, and so on, and so on and so forth, right? So, and so we get all those for the packages, and then we have to get them for each environment. So we get quite some warnings, but again, it's overall something which is dangerous, but doesn't necessarily have to fail, still succeed. But at least you get this feedback. So, and then if we go one step further and look at something that actually is broken, well, just to have something really simple that's broken, let's mess with our core bundle here. So the core project builds a Java bundle for your Java code, and that's built with this POM. So, and typically, if you develop with Java and you import something that is not inside of that bundle, it will generate an import package statement for it. So let's force it here to have a bogus one that it doesn't actually need, but just going to pretend that it needs the org-foo package here. So when we build that bundle, it will end up having an org-foo import, and it needs that to run. And I guess this is a situation that most AM developers already experience, where you typically have to run AM and then deploy your bundle, and then it doesn't resolve, right? Because it's missing some kind of package or whatever. And that's already taking time if you have to do it locally. Depending on your setup, it could be reasonably quick, but it's still it's not the nicest experience to get from the developer, from the rep. So, but in our case, obviously, if you have to wait 20 minutes to get that feedback, that's not a good. It's not a good feeling. So luckily now here with our checks, we get the result much quicker, as you can see here. The analyzer catches this situation and is telling us, okay, we have an error. The bundle test3 core in that version is importing a package, namely our org-foo package, which is not, no bundle is exporting it. So there's something wrong. In addition, just to point that out, we also see a warning here, and that is again more quality issue that the analyzer detects here, namely that we didn't give a version range to our org-foo package, which, just like with the previous warning, it could be something you actually wanted to do. At any rate, it doesn't necessarily have to be harmful. It typically is a mistake. So nothing that we would normally fail the build for, but we give you a warning to show you that there's some kind of quality issue here. But the main thing is, we fail because that bundle is missing a required package. So, and then again, I mean, since we built this cross product across all the different run modes and environments for publish and author and prod and whatever, you will get it repeated here, because you could have that bundle, for example, only in author but not in publish, and then we have to check that. So you get it a couple of times, but once we're done, we will fail the build in this case, and you can fix the situation. And the benefit is, you didn't have to wait 20 minutes to get that result. So I still hope that this is something useful. And I guess with that concludes my demo here.
Great, thank you, Carl. Let me just put up one more slide. Okay, so just, and we'll get to some questions in a second, but some takeaways. Use these analyzers to detect problems in your Maven project, again, to fail fast in seconds rather than deploying to cloud. Rather than, they'll run in cloud, but you want to be able to check them locally. That's the whole point of this. And there's nothing stopping you from doing this today. So modify your Maven projects accordingly. I did put a link to the public documentation in the chat, and afterwards, for those of you who want to head over to the community forum, I think there's a link to that already up in the chat. We'll make sure that the link is there as well. So we can now look at some questions. I hear that there's an echo with my audio, but not much I can do with that right now other than to speak a little more slowly. So now, thanks, Ina. let's look at some questions. So I know David has been addressing them, but maybe I'll highlight.
We had one question from Conrad there that David addressed, right? Which is a useful one. Which basically that we right now, yes, it's true. If you have the analyzers in your local project, they actually right now run tries in the cloud, but that's a temporary thing which we will eventually stop, right? But we had to initially have them as a safeguard in a different place. So now we have to detect that we already run them and then can stop that. But again, I mean, as you could see, I mean, they run reasonably quickly, so it's not huge time sink.
And obviously, you save a lot of time by not having to wait for the cloud pipeline to run them. So even though they might add like 20, 25 seconds to your build, they might save you from that turnaround time. I think Daniel's question is maybe a good one for you, Brian.
Sure, it would be really nice if we could run all cloud checks, including this analyzer and Adobe Sonar checks, rules, right, nightly in Jenkins. So at this point, these will run within Cloud Manager, and I think the request is, is it something that you could add even more checks so that you can kind of run it locally rather than relying right on Cloud Manager. So yeah, thanks for the feedback. Something we can think about.
But at least for this local analyzer part, I mean, as you could see, that's just part of your build, right? So if you want to put up a Jenkins and run it, that's no problem. Or a similar question, just the other way around, that they still now run every time you build the complete reactor. Can that be switched off? Yes. We don't have anything right now put in place directly to do it with out of the box. But I mean, again, as you can see, it's just a simple POM, right? So you can just put in a Maven profile, for example, or just comment out the module from the reactor POM, and it will not be built locally.
There's nothing special about it. It's just a Maven plugin. Right. You can use it in any other way. A Maven plugin would work. There's one other question. I think it comes with. It's actually asked twice if we could fail. I don't actually remember if we could do that. I mean, that would be a feature to request in the issues on the GitHub project that we linked. I mean, it's pretty easy to add. I know that some analyzers have configuration to turn certain things from errors into warnings, but I'm not sure if they can actually fail on warnings. But that might be a small feature to add.
In terms of the GitHub,
I think that's an important thing to emphasize here, and I think David said it in the talk, but just to re-emphasize it, right? Both parts of it. So the actual analyzer framework, that's an open source project in Sling, and you can use it, and you can write your own analyzers and could use them with the setup we have here if you wanted to. And the actual Maven plugin that runs it is also open source on GitHub, right? So you can help and or complain publicly.
I'll share the links in the chat. I'm sure it will be shared afterwards as well, but I'll do that now.
That'd be good.
Yeah, and I did put the public documentation link, so that will be there are links to GitHub from there as well. So many ways to arrive at the same good place. While we're answering these questions, if anybody has thoughts on analyzers that they'd like to see, maybe then feel free to put them in either here or over in the community forum, and we'll think about them. Let's see what else we have.
Well, there was a question about what is native code, which David answered, right? So that we try to catch native code inside bundles. There's an analyzer for it because we don't want to run that in the cloud, I guess. There was some last question. Do you have less lethal warnings on your roadmap, like code style or recommended patterns? So I guess, I mean, as I showed, I mean, some of the things we do are warnings. So these are a little bit more in the area where, in certain gray areas or maybe more question of style, but I don't think we plan to extend it to that level where we would look at code style or something like that. I mean, that's just a different check, and as Brian already mentioned, I mean, that be more something of the code manager checks that are technically separate.
And I guess code style is very subjective as well to your organization, right? What one organization might use spaces, whereas the other one might use tabs, for example. I mean, I don't think that that is something that we should. I mean, there's lots of other tools in the Maven land and outside of Maven land that can help you there.
Yeah, David, anybody could, people can come up with their own, coding conventions as long as they use camel case. So. Okay, so we just have a couple of minutes left, so feel free to put out any other questions. This group will head over to the community forum to see if anything pops up. But other than that, I hope this has been a valuable couple of days, or you've had a good conference, and enjoy the rest of your day or evening or night.
Right.
I see another question here. Let's see, is there any documentation about the parameters of all available analyzers? So that would be in the Git project?
Yes. I can paste the link. Most of it is in the Sling feature analyzer link. Now, the analyzers that are prefixed with API regions, they specifically are concerned about APIs. They are actually in a different Git repo. I'll paste the link to that one as well, and that one contains the documentation. So I see Jörg has a question. What are suitable things to check? I'm not entirely sure what Jörg means, but these analyzers run over project content packages that contain AEM content and OCI bundles. Right. So,
you might have been trying to answer the question about coding style, right? So I think, yeah. Again, in general, this framework is extensible. So if you have something that you really want to check, you can do it. But also, I mean, we plan to, over time, obviously, when we detect or know about new interesting things which we want to prevent or check, we will, of course, start checking it internally, but then we can also make it available this way for the local stuff. So ultimately, keep an eye out for updates to the Maven plugin. When there's new versions of it, it probably makes sense to update it to that.
But Jörg, if you're just looking for, in general, what is suitable to check with an analyzer, I guess I mentioned that when I was talking about the slide, the first slide that I talked about. So maybe you should go back to that one in the recording.
All right. So I know we're going to be cut off in a minute. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day or evening, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.